are those elements that really do create a successful team? It brings a little bit of structure, less ambiguity, clarity, so that we're taking these steps, whether we are a team leader or a team member, we have that really strong influence over what that team's going to do.
Hello and welcome to the Leadership Growth Hour, an interactive monthly event that features timely leadership topics and tools to grow your leadership performance. I'm your host, Daniel Stewart, executive consultant and coach, and president of Stewart Leadership, a global consulting, coaching, and training firm aligning organizations on leadership, teaming, change, and talent. In short, we develop the people side to enable your growth strategies. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Peter Stewart, PhD, managing partner of Stewart Leadership. Welcome, Peter.
Well, thank you. It's a joy to join you, and you do such a great intro.
Oh, gosh, thank you. Okay. Hey, so after managing his own group therapy practice for many years, Peter joined Stewart Leadership about 8 years ago and does extensive work with leaders, teams, and organizations. Not to mention that he is my partner in leading Stewart Leadership, and yes, he is also my brother. And if you stay to the end, we'll let you know who is older than who, and you can keep guessing throughout the show. There you go.
The key question.
That's right. Now on to today's focus area, which is creating a cohesive team, a very timely topic for many of us here. So, Peter, let's start off. Why does teaming get so much attention these days?
It's a great question. If you look everywhere, you see teams. It could be at work. We have identified, or I think come to the conclusion, that we actually perform better when we're not doing things just independently. We recognize we come up with better solutions. We're able to solve more complex problems. We're able to do more and get more done when we're not just trying to do everything ourselves. So teaming is big business. It truly is. It is the way in which we are able to move things along, move the needle. But there is inherent challenge within that because we are not Avatar. You know, the movie with the blue tails coming out of the back of your heads and being able to plug into somebody else to see. So it just comes with this inherent challenge of how do we build a team? How do we work together when we each have a unique brain? And so that's where it, I think, makes every team unique. And it makes it so you can never sit back and say, we've arrived. We're at the perfect team. We're done. It just takes that constant effort. So it's a good one. And as I see it on the slide, as we're looking at Google, they really got teaming in the popular press a number of years ago when they ran what they called Project Aristotle. And they realized that they wanted to get down to the core of what makes really good teams great and why some teams perform better than others. And they found that amount of teamings just absolutely ballooned over the last many years, and teams are what make a difference.
As I'm listening to this, I'm wondering, even love to ask everybody who's listening, how many teams are people actually even on these days? Because I have a feeling many years ago, maybe we were just on one team. And I just wonder if folks want to put in the Q&A, identify how many teams you actually are on today. Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? As you think of all the different teams you're on, would love to see some people's comments here as they're thinking about it, because the average person is clearly on more than one team. It might be so many. We're seeing all 4, 8 to 10, 10, 12. I mean, just even trying to keep track of which team we're on, who's on this team, how long the team is active for, what's the purpose of the team, and to have that teaming skill set so we're continually able to jump in and out of teams, not just for content, but also for the processing of the team itself. Peter, as you're seeing some of this, what are some of your reactions?
Yeah, I'm looking, there's 12 teams, 50 plus teams. I mean, 8 to 10. And as you're highlighting, it's like every team is going to have a unique function, a unique purpose, a unique makeup, a unique division of roles and responsibilities, a unique culture in many ways. And so you think of all of the shifting mentally that an individual has to do as they're going, okay, now I'm about to go over to this team. And I've left this meeting. Now I'm going over to the other one. And now I'm shifting to the other. And it's a lot of different hats to keep track of. And whether you're in a virtual world where you're back to back to back Teams meetings all day, you don't even have the time to walk the hall to go from one room to the next. I just jumped off this call with this team and now I'm on the next team. And talk about the rapid demand and pace and being able to shift and pivot. That's not easy.
And work is continually more and more fluid and team-based. I don't see the team direction, the team movement subsiding. It's only going to increase more and more.
I completely agree. That's my observation as well. It makes me think about how you can position yourself and structure and set up a team so it can be the most successful. Like, what are those elements that really do create a successful team? It brings a little bit of structure, less ambiguity, clarity, so that we're taking these steps, whether we are a team leader or a team member, we have that really strong influence over what that team's going to do.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm looking at one of the comments here. As we are bridging the personal and the professional, for so many of us in a remote setting, you have the family team. We know whatever that, you have the community team, we're all in these pods and groups and collectives. And it's just so critical for us to understand how the heck do we show up helping to build this interaction, this collaboration better to our own benefit and to others.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
So I think we can summarize some of the things we were just talking about with a empathy and maybe just a normalization. If you're listening to this and feeling overwhelmed, feeling a little bit swamped by all of the team dynamics and things you're having to track, you're not alone. You're not alone. But there are some things that we'll be able to chat about that I believe can help. They'll help you be able to identify, to be able to take charge, or to be able to influence these teams and how to manage even across the different teams.
So let's get at some questions. So you and I and many of the folks on our team as True Leadership, we work with so many different teams and helping them get aligned. And there are usually two key questions we will often ask at the beginning that help really determine what to then pay attention to, where to focus, how to further support. And I'm wondering, as we're thinking through these two, I'd love to ask everybody who's listening, what were the two questions you would ask if you were putting on your consultant hat, or frankly, as a team leader or team member? What would be the two questions that you'd want to frame up to then help figure out what to do next, how to best put the team on track or get it back on track, or how to start it off? What are the two topics or questions you'd ask here? And so we'll see as people's answers come in, because then we'll share the two that we often frame up. Peter, what are some of the topics that are coming to your mind as you're thinking about what these two questions may be?
Oh, it's thinking about the members of the team. It's thinking about possibly the purpose of a team. It's thinking about what their goals are, what they're trying to accomplish. Those are all really good questions. There are several you can target as you think about. Yep, I'm seeing in the comments, purpose, goal, who we are, what's the mission. They really are foundational. The charter, and that term comes up even more and more when we're talking about teams, of that concept of the charter. What is it that they are being tasked to do? What's the experience and the expertise that the various members are bringing?
Yeah, especially this purpose notion, to be able to make sure that folks are working together and they aren't, do I even say, attacking or competing against each other. It's a unified force as well. So they have a sense of, how do I align my self-interested perspective to this collective or this group.
And that tension you hit on, Daniel, of how do you rein in some of the inherent natural competitive nature that some of us have a little more than others. I think we all have different personalities and we're wired a little bit differently. But there is that question of, how much can I truly rely on my teammates? How much do I share? Is information weaponized? Do I freely share and communicate that to others? Or am I kind of holding some cards a little closer to my chest to look out for number one, to say, hey, but no, I'm trying to advance. And if I actually share the glory with others, doesn't that prevent my own growth? So there's some natural thoughts that can come into play that get in the way, I believe, of a really good high-performing team.
Okay, so drum roll, please. The first question, and it coincides in various ways with what people have been talking about now, although it takes a slightly different angle. And the first question is, how much of a team do you really want? In other words, what level of teamness, what level of cohesiveness are you after? And we'll use this term teamness to then describe that sense of unity, because teams can have a variety of different levels of cohesiveness, and it's all based ultimately on the strategy or the desired outcome that you're striving to achieve. Walk us through this, Peter, as we're thinking of this as a critical question to ask up front.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to note this word teamness. We're using that as an adjective. We'll use the term teaming as a verb. It is an active process. And it's recognizing that the level of interdependency, the level of interaction, the level of shared goals may vary significantly across teams depending on the purpose and the function of it. So it's really helping to get some alignment. As we think here, we can do a simple kind of sports analogy as we look at types of teams that are out there. We can think of a wrestling team in which they are a team, but how does the sport of wrestling go? It is a one-on-one match. One wrestler goes out and they'll compete against the wrestler from that other team. And then it's the kind of the additive score that helps to determine that. So I would argue that that's probably a lower level of teamness. Does that make them less of a team? No, it's identifying what level is needed to able to accomplish that purpose or objective. Now, on the kind of other end, I would say, as we look at more of a high teamness focus, probably football or even soccer, in which there's you having to pass the ball and use coordinated plays and be aligned with the activities of each other. And that where there is that higher interdependency among the players. And so it's even thinking about where does this team need to be? And it's not just where does the team want to be? Because they may have this, and a 10 isn't the optimal. We're not saying all teams have to get to a 10. That might be wasted energy and effort if it's not required. But it's what does the business need in terms of that level of teamness? I was just in a session yesterday as we were talking about this and reviewing, and this a large team, and had them all write on a Post-it note on 1 to 10 what level of teamness they believe they needed. And it took some courage for them to hold up their Post-it notes as we went around, and there were about 20 of them or so. And there's variability of ranging from 5 to 10 and going through and having, okay, those that are talking, thinking we probably need around 5 or 6, where's your perspective coming from? Okay, those that are thinking we're 7 or 8, share your thoughts. Those that are the 9 or 10, share your thoughts. And it provided just a tremendous perspective to hear where people are coming from and what they felt the needs were and perspective. So then we could further align that team. So it's not just an abstract scale. You can really put this tool to use.
Oh, yeah. Well said, especially because this question, as you put it, has no right answer necessarily.
Yeah.
It will depend on that strategy. What kind of level of teamness do you need to achieve? So, okay, for all listeners here, there are 2 questions I want you to put in and answer, and both simply on a scale from 1 to 10. Pick one team you're a part of. You've all said you're on many, many different teams. Pick one team and identify on the scale from 1 to 10, 1 being low teamness, little to no shared goals, little to no shared rewards, little to no interdependency. 10 being, oh, we are shared, totally interdependent, working together. Where are you today on that scale from 1 to 10? And then where would you like to be on that same scale, 1 to 10? So you can just put 2 numbers and to kind of say, all right, where are we today? Where would we like to be? And again, you're thinking, what level of group activity do we need to have to achieve something better or more accurate or have greater buy-in? What would that be? And I'm seeing lots of, 6, 7, 9, 8 to 10, 5 currently. We got the 7 to 9, the 3 to 10. Yeah, I love it. Okay, 3 to 8. Yes, probably a lot of people joining today are like, I'm joining because I want this to get better. Get it? Yes, yes.
That's true.
For sure.
Because it's this gap analysis of really looking at that delta between present and desired or needed. And again, it's not stating that every team needs to get to a 10 and somehow that's nirvana. No, it's really matching what those needs are for the present. But if you look at the trends, most individuals are identifying a score that is lower than where they believe they need to be getting to. So there is this desire to build the level of teamness.
And as we continue to increase the level of teamness, it also requires us to pay more attention to the processes of the team, to allow the team to keep renewing and sustaining itself, to be able to keep that high level of teamness. Because teams don't always naturally stay that level of collaborative teamness on their own. It requires concerted effort. All good. We just need to make time and effort to do that. Oh yeah, love it. Okay, clearly there is a lot of desire. How do we keep increasing this level of teamness? So that's the first question. Are you ready for the second question? Here we go. This next question we're after is the confidence question. How much confidence do you have in your team to be able to then get the job done? And for this one, there is a right answer. Because you have on the left hand, low confidence. In other words, everybody seems to have their own vision for success, or questionable skills or performance, or there's a structure or authority question, or it may be a shifting, it's in flux. That's the low confidence. And then on the other side, you have this high confidence when everybody has this common vision, this clear objective, and people are competent and they're able to show up and perform that people can count on, and that there's a clarity around decision-making rights already. We want all teams to be high confidence. Peter, as you're hearing this, what are some reactions?
Yeah, and I think it's looking at, this is not just a question to ask of the team leader. I think that's a good place to start, is they have the largest influence over, do we have the right people in the right roles? But once that leader is confident in that, it's all, and maybe there are some personnel changes or some shifts in roles and responsibilities to truly try and leverage the strengths of each one. I'm reminded of the classic HBR article of Market, I think it was Buckingham who wrote it, or Goldsmith. Anyway, on great managers play chess, not checkers. And it's that idea that not everybody's the same. In checkers, every piece is identical. In chess, every piece has particular strengths and weaknesses, and how you position them to leverage those strengths. So people are feeling more confident. They're more satisfied and feeling happier as they're performing. So it's getting that confidence that you have the right people, but you also want your teammates to have that confidence in each other. That helps to engender the trust. It helps to engender the collaboration. It increases that willingness to reach out and to help and to support and to build that camaraderie. that many of us are desiring to have in the team. So I think those are some angles you can look at it, both as a leader, but then also as a team member.
Yeah. And you reminded me of the psychological concept of efficacy. So you have this self-efficacy. In other words, you believe that you can do something. You believe it. And then you have this team efficacy. Do we actually believe as a team that we can accomplish this? And in other words, you can swap that, and it's very similar to confidence. And without that efficacy, without that sense of confidence that we can do it, wow, that it's not much of a team. And you really can't accomplish stuff. And frankly, you might as well just try to do it on your own. Because at the end of the day, the real question is, are we able to achieve something better by working together? And that's what everybody, hopefully, is striving to then work toward. Otherwise, why have a team?
I'm going to have you repeat that question, or I'll repeat it for you because it is so good. And it is, are we able to accomplish something better by working together? That is the fundamental reason why a team exists. And so I hope it's something we are repeating often. And if for some reason we're hesitant or we're not really sure that that's the answer, it's a reexamination about how this team is structured, who's involved in it. Are we clear on our purpose, on our goals, and all these sorts of other aspects that really help to create a high-performing team?
So shall we ask this for all the listeners? So same kind of question as we did before, but this time current and future state on this 1 to 10 scale of confidence. 1 being low confident and 10 being really high sense of confidence. Pick a team that you're on. What would you say? What is 1 to 10 where you currently are at and where you would like it to be? Pick any team you're on and let's start seeing. And we're already good. Yep. 7 to 10, 7 to 10, two on most, 6 on a couple, 1 to get 10. Thank you for the honesty. Yes. We have 1 to 10.
And I think
was
Daniel's
that a -4? Peter.
Yeah.
Somebody
I'm
said
looking at these.
-4. That's pain. Yes. Ouch.
Several of them. And it's recognizing that there are, do you answer this collectively as a team? Where you're giving that kind of team average score? Or are you honing in who are those particular team members that you may have lower confidence in? And I think that's where, as we have some of these responses that are given a little bit of this range of that confidence score. So as you are providing that and thinking of it as a leader, it's what is driving that score? What is it about the team that is having it be less than, an 8, 9, or a 10, where you're hoping to have that high level of confidence? It's a really good self-reflective question.
And frankly, even asking everybody on the team these 2 questions and processing that and talking about what can be done now, that's the team process conversation in and of itself. And it takes guts, it takes some courage, and it takes a willingness to then have a belief that, yes, we can do something about it. Oh, yeah. So this leads into a way of thinking about developing teams, both as what a team looks like, what does a great team look like, and the steps to get there as well. And so as we then share this here, we want to talk for a second about a model called Teaming for Success. And there are a lot of great teaming models out there. This is one we find particularly powerful in helping build cohesive teams. And there are 5 stages to it. And we'll just kind of go through, and please shoot questions back and forth here as you would like to. We'll definitely be able to then keep checking on these questions. Peter, talk to us about this first stage of launching as the place to start developing teams.
Happy to. And as we describe this process by which a team is formed, as well as the steps that are taken to really align the behaviors, it comes down to the purpose. Why is it that we are together? And during this launching stage or the launching phase, we're really clarifying it. So we identify our purpose. It is the hub of our wheel analogy or metaphor. Everything comes back down to the purpose. And I was thrilled as we were asking that question earlier of what are the two questions to ask a team? How many of you were starting off with that mission goal, that purpose? You recognize how foundational that is. So that's the core hub, but then it's recognizing the context. That is the situation around that we are operating in. Every context is going to be a little different for the team, but we have to fully be aware of what that is. And so that's where we're launching during that phase one. It's answering that core question, why we are together. Why does this team exist? And then that leads us now into, once we've clarified it, the next phase.
Connect us, and then we'll kind of pause it after this one, address
Sure.
some questions and see connections, please.
And we're action focused. I mean, we're not just a bunch of philosophers sitting around trying to ponder and contemplate the purposes of life and why we exist as a team. So we have to clarify that, but then we have to be sure and identify what it is we're trying to accomplish, what we're trying to do. And that's the aligning part. And this is where it's a clarifying, what is the structure of this team? How is this organized? Do we have leadership? Do we have co-leads? How is this divided? Who are the people and the resources required to be on this team so we can accomplish our purpose? And those can be both, when you talk about resources, it can be both internal just for on the people side, but also access to other technologies or tools or systems as well. And then it's the plan. It's really being able to translate that more ambiguous purpose into an actionable work plan that then can be identified to monitor for progress and put into work. So we launch, then we align so that we're getting moving. This wheel is in motion. We're getting some traction.
And building on what you were saying, what's so cool about these first two phases, this is not even talking about the people's names yet. This is setting up the business side of the team. And sometimes we go straight over this and we dive in straight into the people, which, yes, we got to spend a lot of time there. But we find that we're able to go farther, faster, once these two elements, these two phases are addressed enough to be able to then inform, because really the next phase in all of this is where we all spend a lot of our time. And that's in this trusting phase, which is all around how we work together, the team commitment, morale, the team operations, in other words, the rules of how we then celebrate or hold each other accountable or expect each other to behave. And then the communication. How open do we transparently share things or not? Do we engage in open feedback? How we manage conflict? All of these things are so key. And frankly, that's where all of us probably spend a lot of our time. But we find this trusting phase can be done even better when it's built on a foundation of making sure this launching and aligning phase is really well answered and addressed again and addressed again. Peter, as you're hearing this, give me some reactions.
And it's helping the point you made about identifying the aligning phase and the people and the resources and that before the names are attached. It's a hard thing because we're humans working with humans. And at times we can retrofit the team based on the people around. And sometimes that can work, but oftentimes it causes challenges. And it comes back to say, we are in existence as a team to be accomplishing this purpose, this function. And it takes some of that courage to be able to say, who is going to be the best fit for this team? And otherwise we end up spinning, and it's kind of like driving with the clutch in a little bit, where there's a lot of activity in the engine, but we're not going very far. The gears aren't engaging. And we spin cycles in this trusting cycle because we just don't have the right people in the right places.
The clutch and the wheel, That's one of the reasons why we actually use this wheel to suggest continual forward motion, because yes, we're putting this out in a linear fashion. And in reality, there are many parts of this that can overlap. And the point is to keep moving as we go. And to that end, walk us through this next phase.
This is the clarification of results, of achieving. We've spent the time laying the foundation. We've talked about how we're going to structure it, what we're going to do. We're talking about how we're going to do it. And now in this achieving phase, it's how close are we actually getting to the results we're trying to accomplish? Usually that's not just a binary yes, no response. How are we tracking our progress? How are we pivoting, adjusting, helping to ensure? What are those KPIs that we're looking at? Those various metrics, the report outs, the benchmarks, so that we can see our progress. And that's the big difference between good teams and great teams. You know, good teams are trying to achieve results. Great teams are measuring their progress toward those results at all times. So it is very, very clear what we're trying to do, because then that allows, not to lead too much, but we could jump into that fifth phase for the review, the reflecting back, to recognize once we've gone through these first 4 stages, it's not like we're done. This is in motion. And hence why the wheel is representing that spin. It's a renewing, it's a going back and saying, okay, is that hub still solid? Do some of these spokes need a little more work on each other? Are the plans as clear? Are the communication methods, are they effective? Are they working? Hey, we had somebody I knew. Okay, we got to go back in and let's make sure they're fitting appropriately and we get everybody on board. So that's the whole kind of life cycle of this team process.
Yeah. And for folks who are just listening, so 5 phases here. First, launching. Second, aligning. Third, trusting. Fourth is achieving. And 5 is renewing. And this renewal part, this is where sometimes people feel like they don't need to do it, or it's a waste of time, or it should have already been done once because they had an offsite, or they had an hour or 2 that they talked about it. All well-intentioned, and that's needed. The point is, it's not sufficient to be able to then continue renewing and to help everybody on the team recognize they have a part to keep revisiting these teaming dimensions and these phases as needed. Because ultimately, yes, as I mentioned, we have these 5 phases. What inevitably really happens is we are in this renewal phase all the time. And it's the extent in which we engage in that renewal that will then help determine the sustaining of a highly performing team.
That's really, really well put, Daniel, in terms of emphasizing that continual process. We have a really good question that came through in the chat that I think we can address. How do you delineate the need to a team to have a common vision, meaning agreeing to and working toward the same objectives, but not necessarily collaborating on the actual work? So it's that idea of, can you have a common vision when the nature of the work is more independent and it doesn't require as much of that collaboration? And I think as you look into it, sure, you can. It's common purpose. And here's an example of a team I think where that would fit well. A call center team in which the mission is to provide really good customer service to those who are calling in and needing help. Does each individual caller need to collaborate and work with the other callers to accomplish that mission? As they're going about their day-to-day activities, probably it's less, probably it's more independent. Could you build in some training and learning opportunities, at the end of the day to learn and improve those processes? Sure. But a lot of those activities are done individually. But I think it's agreeing on why do we exist and what are these core guiding principles that we are going to follow.
You raise a great point, because sometimes we can assume that in order for a great team to be working, everybody needs to be interacting with everybody all the time. And there's just this assumption that we have that that's the case. And the reality is great teams do not need to have everybody interacting with each other all the time. They need to have clear purpose and to know when they should be interacting or not, depending upon the nature of the work. We'll often call it focused collaboration or disciplined collaboration, because it's easy to then kind of go the other side and suddenly there are meetings everywhere all the time that everybody needs to be a part of. And that's kind of run amok the other way. And so it's balancing that, clarifying what really is the purpose, and by the nature of the task of what we're trying to accomplish, how much do we need to collaborate? And how do we keep that in mind as we move forward?
That's
Oh,
a
for
great
sure.
point, Daniel, because collaboration and having more of it is not the universal answer. It's recognizing collaboration is a tool to be used when appropriate. And at times it can be overused.
I have a question for you, Peter.
Sure.
Out of all the different team development activities that you've done, what's a favorite activity that you've done to help create cohesive teams?
That's an easy one for me. And it comes back to developing team operating principles. It's helping the team go through that process of establishing, and whether they call them operating principles or ground rules or norms, it's clarifying these are the expectations, the 7 to 10 principles that we commit to and you can count on to get from each other. We're going to interact with respect. We're going to attribute charitable intent. We have each other's back. We're willing to correct and to have debate and openly, those sorts of things in which everybody's on the same page. And as you establish those, it really does help prepare that cadence to be that catalyst to move forward and to launch, so that there's not that, well, are we allowed to do this here? Are we allowed to do that there? What to do. So that is one of my absolute favorite activities to go through and to do.
As you're talking, yes, love it, fantastic. As I then think about what's one of my favorite team development activities, I go to the life milestone activity, because I find so often one of the first steps for developing any team is to humanize each other. Because too often people are looking at each other as, I just need this from that person, and I just need this, and that's it. Okay. However, each person is a person with passions and desires and challenges and pressures, and understanding and appreciating that, building a sense of empathy is powerful. And so this life milestone activity really helps people identify 5 to 7 milestones in their life. And then they share that with everybody else on the team. And that opens up conversation, and it helps, again, make people more human as they appear. And suddenly we can connect with each other. And this trusting phase, which is that middle phase where we often spend so much time, it can go so much better, as well as then crafting some team rules or operating principles, which is key. And then adding, of course, the accountability plan to those team operating principles to make it stick. Love it.
I love doing that life milestone exercise. You learn new things about somebody, even teams that have been operating for many years together, coworkers that have been the same. We'll run this exercise and they'll come away and say, I never knew that about fill in the blank person. Here it is, it's brand, but you gain that appreciation of, this is what drives them. This is why they tend to react this way, or this experience. And you get to know that human to human level. It's an excellent one. If you don't have time to do a full milestone, one I've been doing recently is just where at the beginning of a meeting, or if you have a few hours at an offsite or an all hands or something like that, everybody just writes on a card an interesting fact about themselves. Just one little fact, and then you just kind of pull it out of a hat and read it, and see people try and guess who it is. And you can kind of spread that out throughout the day, a little bit of a popcorn exercise there. But it's this idea that we really build trust by not just appreciating the professional skills that people bring, but also by understanding them at the human level.
So let's keep talking along this theme, because this blurring of the professional and the personal, especially with remote work that we all are living in, and this trend is only going to keep going. How do all of the things we've been talking about thus far around building a cohesive team apply to a remote team or a hybrid team, a virtual team, a team that are not able to all be in person? What are your thoughts about that, Peter?
Man, it sure has changed over these last few years as far as the attention that has been brought to remote and hybrid teams. But what's fascinating is there are many organizations that have been 100% remote or virtual even before the pandemic. So you can build teams in a remote setting. You can build very strong teams in that setting. So I think many of the guiding principles continue to apply. You just have to be more intentional about it. And at times a little more creative. Recognize what are the things that can happen to build these relationships when you're all physically in the same room or office or getting together that is missing in a hybrid or a virtual setting. And so you build in a lot of that it's the informal chit chat, the conversation, the water cooler, the conversations down the hall, the interactions as you're waiting for the meeting to start as people arrive. And so do you open that up on your Teams link, on your Zoom call for people to have some of that chat and that banter and dialogue before the meeting starts? Are you building in that first 5 minutes in a virtual one to say, okay, how was the weekend? Anybody have any news they want to share? To give that space. So I think that's a helpful thing we can try and do, because it doesn't just happen on its own in a virtual one, because we don't have those natural opportunities.
Yeah, so much of it, as I'm hearing you, is around expectations and managing those expectations and embracing the different types of boundaries and expectations that are needed to be able to be discussed. I find a lot of the challenges with remote teams are because we're somehow still thinking and wanting a non-remote team the whole time. Instead of sitting back and saying, wait a minute, we have a remote team. How can we truly leverage and appreciate this and be able to build expectations and be comfortable with asynchronous communication, for example? How to help be comfortable in talking about distractions and different types of distractions, and to how to be comfortable in talking about loneliness, frankly, and what that means and what that looks like, because some folks, they need a lot more interaction and other folks don't need as much. And so it's much like any team environment. It's being able to then say, what are the strengths and expectations and challenges for each person, and not lamenting that, oh, I wish we weren't, but rather saying, this is where we're at. And how do we optimize this, even frankly, in the onboarding conversations? Yeah. We've been sharing with clients so many around a new revised onboarding checklist, or welcome to the team checklist, to be able to then have in one-on-ones to be able to go through and clarify, what are the expectations? What is the routine? How do we manage outcome? And how do we balance expectations with the technology component to be able to foster as a team, and having those, yes, a one-on-one, but also as a team conversations? It often comes back to that process, willingness to talk about process together as a team, which is that renewal over and over again. Peter, please, anything to add here?
It's just really helping to double click on that process idea. And as a leader of a team, we cannot be so distracted by the results that we're expected, especially those business results of what we're trying to deliver, that we neglect to take the time to really identify the how we're doing it, and to take that time to process, to solicit feedback, to identify it, to get to know each and every member of our team individually and what their needs are. If you say you don't have time to do that, my argument is I don't believe you don't have time not to. I mean, you have to be able to get in and to do that in order for there to be the high performing, to understand and to recognize the individual needs that they bring. Not everybody needs the same thing. This is virtual teams. Maybe it's an introvert's paradise. It could be an extrovert's hell. How do you know if you're not having those conversations?
Yeah, that's well put. That's well put. So here, as we're getting close to the end here, let's wrap up with this question I'm seeing here. What's the one piece of advice, Peter, you would give to help build cohesive teams with all of the things that we've been talking about thus far? What is it that you would really say, look, please pay attention to this? What would you say?
It goes back to one, you have to align around a common goal and purpose. That has to be very clear. You have to be able to do it, and you have to take time to talk about the process of how you're doing what you're doing, not just the what. If you're willing to do that, there's a lot of options of how you can talk about that how. I'm not sure any of them are really wrong, as long as you're consciously focusing on soliciting some feedback and information from the team on how you're going to get it done. I think we can get a little too paralyzed by, well, am I doing this right? What about this? And what is this theory saying? Just try and have that conversation or examine the how. It gets you on the journey.
That's well said. I'll just briefly add, yes, the purpose. The other comment I would make to build on that would be have a process mindset to be able to shift from the content of the team to the process of the team, because you can get so embedded in making sure you get the stuff done, which yes, is important, but you also have to be able to shift out and to look at the process of the team. And that's where you go back to the teaming for success phases and the team dimensions there and say, how well are we doing in these phases, in these dimensions, and spend the time to be able to revisit and to update and change with it, because it ain't static. That's a fact. It will then be fluctuate and be so dynamic, and you need to then be dynamic with it and be willing to talk about it.
Oh, it's so true. And to recognize that dynamic process. And I love the way that you're using that word process and the flexibility in that process, and recognizing that process reengineering may need to happen if the present process isn't working. And there was a question that came in that was asking, is there a survey to assess the state of a team and their cohesion? And we do. Our Teaming for Success framework that we shared, we have an assessment that teams take. And you can take it as an individual, as a leader, to assess your team. It also can function as a team 360, in which every member of the team is able to take that survey, and you get the collective results to say, which of these dimensions of team development are we doing well at? Where are the areas we need to shore up, and identify then some plans to build. And that's a process that helps with that ongoing process reengineering to help your team really be successful.
In fact, the Teaming for Success assessment, it's often helpful to do like once a year or at milestone points, because then you could benchmark to see where you're at in all of the 9 team dimensions. That's where we often will start, and then we could benchmark, and then we can come back and say, are we making progress as well? And that can then be facilitated on your own, or we could help, but it's really helpful to then have some sort of baseline there. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, we want to also honor, as people are no doubt getting to other meetings very soon, Peter, thank you for joining Leadership Growth Hour today.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me. And as my older brother, I'm always looking up to you. And
what? You're giving it away now?
I know. I gave it away.
Okay, that's good. I got him by 2 years, folks. That's right. I'm the older.
The older, wiser one.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you, Peter. Great conversations. And for our listeners, thank you very much for all of your questions and comments and interaction. To register for future Leadership Growth Hour events, please visit stewartleadership.com/events. We'd love to have you join us. Till the next time, all the best, folks. Take care.